Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and this one is absolutely ridiculous. Trump is now threatening to potentially bomb Moscow. Of course, there was a memo in 2024 from before he was elected where he was talking about this with some people as well, but now he's actually formally made a threat as President Trump asks Ukraine if they can strike Moscow. Zelensky says, absolutely, we can if you give us the weapons. Now, Trump has just transferred a bunch of weapons to Ukraine and mandated that NATO does the same. Trump pledges to bomb the shit out of Moscow and Beijing. I mean, this is beyond insane, not something that we're surprised by, but I know a lot of people that have been longtime supporters of Trump are surprised by it because, of course, he's supposedly the peace president, quote unquote. So now Zelensky is threatening these new long range strikes into Russia. And of course, telling Russia that they have a 50-day notice to end the conflict with Ukraine, while, of course, Russia is rejecting it as unacceptable. As Denmark brings in a draft, a conscription for men and women, and is about to supply satellite communications to Ukraine's military. And Germany wants to arm Ukraine quickly and quietly, they say. Now, Germany, of course, being basically the only country outside of Ukraine that has formally declared war on Russia. This is exactly what we've been warning of. The script is always written this way so that the military industrial complex remains and continues to be pushed forward. That war machine keeps on churning. So we're going to go into this and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check those links below and get prepared today. It's never been more important to get prepared. There's heavensharvest.com in the description of this video. For long-term storable food that's non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items in the United States. I highly recommend people get on this today. You can pay in gold and silver. You can pay a little bit now and a little bit later. Either way, this is about getting yourself and your family prepared for what's to come because the end goal is a technocratic, ration-based digital ID system, which means that you guys will not be able to choose your food. You guys, if you're dependent on grocery stores, will be put in a very big quandary with especially these scripted wars being pushed forward to bring in these emergency orders. So go and check it out, heavensharvest.com, code WHAM. Also check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. There you could also get freeze-dried chicken and ground beef. Use code WHAMBEEF, W-A-M-B-E-E-F, all one word, and you will get 20% off on your order. I highly recommend this. Get on this today. Stock up while you still can. As always, my friends, hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. Now let's get into this. So as BRICS News reports just in, President Trump asks Ukraine if they can strike Moscow, Russia. Ukrainian President Zelensky, and I quote, absolutely we can if you give us the weapons. Remember that whole act, that stage show that happened in the Oval Office a while back ago during a conference where Trump and Zelensky got into a big fight. Of course, they're also propping up J.D. Vance as the next presidential hopeful for 2028, and the mainstream alternative media are eating it up. But nonetheless, it's quite clear that everything that Trump has said during the election, he is throwing to the wayside. Remember, he promised to get the Epstein files out. Then they said the Epstein files are on our desk. And then he said, oh, there are no Epstein files. And it's a hoax by the Democrats, even though we've been talking about Epstein since 2009, 6 years before he announced his candidacy. But nonetheless, of course, it's just a Democrat hoax. And this is in the latest PSYOP, obviously. And simultaneously, this happens as he agrees to arm Ukraine while Netanyahu is sitting across from him, while Netanyahu is nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize, and simultaneously helping Israel with $1 trillion to annex Palestine, the largest military budget in U.S. history, while also going to war with Syria and going to war with Iran, and now pushing for bombings in Moscow and Beijing. I mean, we are talking about delusion. Remember, Trump said that doing anything like this, Kamala would cause World War III. And I agree because the script is written the same. It's not like this whataboutism is so crazy. Well, what if she was in it? What happened to all that time that people said, well, what if she was in it? It would be World War III. Well, he's literally doing the exact same thing that she said that she wanted to do, that Clinton said she wanted to do, that Biden was pushing for. I mean, and by the way, none of these people were actually doing any of these things because at the end of the day, Trump, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, whatever, they don't have power. They're not actually in charge. They are puppets. Is it not evident enough by the obvious use of blackmail against Trump right now to push this agenda out on the global stage? I mean, it's pretty blatant. And of course, Israel is heavily involved. And of course, Israel has been heavily involved in Ukraine for a long time, as well as Russia, by the way, because of course, they were the closest one of the top countries in the world that speak Russian is Israel. A lot of people in Israel speak Russian. And of course, we know why, because we could go back to the Holodomor, we could go back to World War II, we could go back to the massive amount of people that moved from Russia, Poland, Ukraine, etc., to Israel, and then committed the Nakba back in 1948. This is a long history, of course, and the Khazarians in Ukraine, and we could go on and on and on about that. But the point is, both of them. Remember, at the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine, Israel put out a public statement asking for Ukraine to surrender to Russia, and then after the conflict started with Palestine, well, it didn't start. It started a long time ago, obviously decades and decades ago. But when it started most recently, back in October of 2023, we saw this massive wave of sudden support by Israel for Ukraine and Ukraine for Israel. And they were exchanging weapons for each other. So it just goes to show you that they back both sides. But now Trump is, who, obviously is blackmailed by Epstein, like basically every other politician, because Epstein was a Mossad agent that worked for Israel. He is now talking about bombing Moscow. Trump pledges to bomb the shit out of Moscow and Beijing. A recording has surfaced in which Donald Trump says he threatened Russia and China with military action. The audio, which apparently captures Trump telling donors that he warned major world leaders of consequences they would face if crossing geopolitical lines, is now circulating worldwide. Amid speculation about its authenticity, it's impossible to ignore the public and diplomatic ramifications of such a recording. Is it just another excerpt of Trump's usual bravado or the brewing of a further global conflict? Well, again, if you look at that, teamed with that information coming out, and then we find out around the exact same time, Trump publicly just recently asked Zelenskyy if he could strike Moscow if the U.S. provided longer range weapons. Trump later denied that he was considering sending long-range weapons to Ukraine and said that Ukraine shouldn't target Moscow. But he's on audio saying this. He's just recently, as that audio came out, he says, hey, can you strike? And Zelenskyy says, yes, if you give us the weapons. And he has been giving a bunch of weapons. He almost gave them long-range missiles. He's pulled back recently, but only with the stipulation of this 50 days to end the conflict with Ukraine that he's pushing on Russia, which also includes sanctions. So again, this is still very much on the table. And of course, on top of that, Trump has said that when asked what weapons will be sent to Ukraine via NATO, he says it's everything. It's all of them. It's a full complement, which, by the way, this also means long-range missiles from NATO while Trump is funding it, while he's supporting it, and while NATO is supporting Trump. Suddenly, after all this time of him saying that he wanted to drop out of NATO, then he brags about how they're all adding more money to their military budgets within NATO and paying more, which a lot of people said, oh, this is a success. It means that the U.S. isn't the only one paying a lot. Okay, it's not the U.S. only being the one that's paying a lot. Now it's all of them, and it's all for militarism. Why is this a good thing? Why are we getting so prepared for war with all these countries around the world for a World War III scenario? Because this is ensuring that it will indeed happen, my friends, as Germany actually runs out of their stockpile as they push in these conscriptions across the board, with Mark Rutte, by the way, former leader over in the Netherlands, now the head of NATO, who pushed, the worst of 2020 to 2022, also helped ban David Icke from all of the European Union, and of course, pushed full-fledged technocracy with the World Economic Forum. So, okay, let's look at what Trump actually said. And yeah, it's published by CNN, and no one trusts CNN. We get it. It's and through the Washington Post, we don't trust that either. But we do know that this was actually said. It says, and this is what he said: with Putin, I said, if you go into Ukraine, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. So he goes like, I don't believe you. He said, no way. And I said, way. He believed me 10%. I told you this. He believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. I said the same thing to them. I said, and I quote, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing, you're going to bomb? I said, I have no choice. I got to bomb you. He didn't believe me either. He said 10%, and 10% is all you need. In fact, 5% would have been okay too. Okay, So this is ridiculous, and it has been verified. And obviously, it's, yeah, bravado, as they say, but it's just the notion of bombing Moscow or Beijing would bring the entire world into a conflict the likes of which we've never seen in history, and especially with the Skynet type drone AI drones that they've pushed forward, which Trump just got funding for, with the Saudi crown prince and Sam Altman and Larry Ellison and Larry Fink of BlackRock and Alex Carper Palantir and Peter Thiel and all these CEOs of all these major banks. They are all working on this massive AI deal, which also includes militarism. And in the big, beautiful bill, he just brought in AI control of nuclear weapons. So this is happening as he asks Zelenskyy about the ability to strike Moscow. There's no coincidences here. They're manipulating people and normalizing people to this shift. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has threatened to launch long-range strikes deep inside Russian territory, signaling escalating tensions in the ongoing conflict. This announcement follows a U.S. decision to resume military aid to Ukraine, a critical development as the war enters its third year, which, by the way, again, Putin has said already that would be an act of war and a complete and total act of war, which Germany already doubled down on and said, it doesn't matter. We're going to go in and we're going to attack Russia. We are at war with Russia, which is what the chancellor in Germany said about a month ago. Ukraine has demonstrated its growing capacity to strike within Russia, targeting military airfields and strategic bombers in recent weeks. These attacks have destroyed critical military infrastructure and sent a strong message to Moscow about Ukraine's resolve. However, this conflict has resulted in unintended casualties, with Ukrainian drones and missiles hitting civilian infrastructure, causing significant casualties and raising concerns. The European Union has committed hundreds of billions of euros to expand its military industrial complex and support Ukraine's domestic weapons production, aiming to enhance Ukraine's self-sufficiency in defense. Zelenskyy claimed that Russia's summer offensive has failed to meet the Kremlin's expectations, with Ukrainian forces thwarting Russian attempts to advance. Lawmakers from both U.S. political parties are pushing for a bill to authorize such measures, indicating a potential major shift in Western sanction policy. The international community remains divided, with some leaders advocating for more aggressive stance against Russia, while others, like the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, call for immediate ceasefire and political solution. Now, Trump is listening to people like Lindsey Graham, obviously, and that's been very, very blatantly obvious in his recent moves. And of course, all the neocons that started the Never Trump movement, he's now bowing to, while calling anyone that wants information on Epstein's trafficking network, which is extremely important, and justice needs to prevail in that, calling them stupid and weaklings, and that he doesn't want their support. So I don't want to have to say I told you so again, but I know, and most of you watching already understand this, but like, my goodness, it was always so obvious. Presidents are out of power. Government is organized crime. Government isn't going to fix the problems of government. And the script was written long ago, and it doesn't suddenly end because some guy with a haircut gets in. As I wrote on X regarding Ukraine, it's almost like he's blackmailed by Epstein/Israel and does what he's told. It's pretty blatantly obvious. Trump spraying Ukraine surprise on NATO states, says Reuters. Several bloc members reportedly only learned they were supposed to fund American weapons for Kyiv when it was announced by the U.S. president. So again, so what happened to everything he ran on about being the peace president? He was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by none other than Netanyahu, as he's talking about arming Ukraine against Russia, as he's going after Iran. It gives hellfire missiles to Israel to preemptively strike Iran, and then, of course, bombs Iran when they retaliate, a country that hasn't attacked anyone in 200 years, by the way, while the U.S. has attacked over 100 countries in the last 100 years, and, of course, is the only country that dropped nuclear bombs on anyone. And after, again, all this was manipulated, Russia and Ukraine were both propped up by the U.S. in the first place. Ukraine with the 2014 Maidan massacre, false flag, but of course, Russia in World War I and World War II, same time as the United Nations, same time as Israel. We can look at FDR arming and funding Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam to eventually fight against the U.S. with U.S. weapons in the 50s, 60s, into the 70s. And of course, We can also go into the fact that, 1953, the military coup against Iran, which the U.S. perpetrated, which led eventually to the Iranian Islamic Revolution of 1979, which led to a big hostage crisis, which of course was it was clearly created as a psyop to shift into the Ayatollah rule, which, by the way, where do the Ayatollahs get their weapons from? Where do these revolutionaries get their weapons from? Well, it's weird. They seem to come from the U.S. and Oman and Qatar, where the U.S. has a bunch of military funding towards and has bases. Anyway, you can just go look at ISIS, Al Qaeda, Taliban, Mujahideen, Muslim Brotherhood, all of them propped up by the U.S. and Israel. In many cases, Hamas propped up by Israel through U.S. funding for Israel. And again, China and Taiwan, both 1948 in China and 1972 in China, helping them against starvation event, which Kissinger met with Mao Zedong and created this alliance. And that led to the Trilateral Commission and Zbigniew Brzezinski, the defense secretary under Jimmy Carter, as well as the Rockefellers, springing in this new system of militarism, which utilized China as a guinea pig state for technocracy. They claimed it was all about economic, agreements, but it was about technocracy and eventual militarism, as we see the scripted shift from the West to the East. So this has been going on for a long time. It's all totally manufactured. And of course, Iraq's Ba'athist Party, 1968, 1983, it goes on and on and on and on. So now we have this move to fund Ukraine in a war against Russia. We have what's going on in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Israel, in Iran, in Iraq still, in Syria, which we'll get into in a moment. Zelenskyy urges Trump to revisit Ukrainian missile proposer. Kiev's original request to host nuclear-capable long-range Tomahawks was rejected under the Biden administration. It's going to be pretty bad when Trump approves this, when Biden didn't, yet he ran against Biden and Kamala starting World War III, which, again, they probably would have. Not them. They're just puppets, but you get what you know what I mean. Trump gives Moscow 50 days to end the conflict with Ukraine, or the U.S. will impose sanctions. Well, Trump's 50-day ceasefire ultimatum to Russia rejected as unacceptable by Moscow. Now, this also has a stipulation which could involve long-range missiles in Ukraine. So again, it continues. Denmark to supply satellite communications to Ukraine's military while they're bringing conscription and what they call woke conscription and forcing women into the military. And of course, we're seeing that conscription be pushed by the National Defense Authorization Act in the US as of the recent one. Of course, in Canada, which Canada is talking about going to war with Russia for Ukraine, which is insane. And at the same time as the UK, and Boris Johnson laughs on video saying, I would go fight if I was told to go fight, as they push conscription there. In Ireland as well, which was a neutral country before. And of course, places like Italy and France and Spain and Germany, all of them calling for conscription. This is a real thing, my friends. It's not about fear mongering. It's just we need to know the truth. We need to know the negatives to make positives out of it. War. Germany wants to arm Ukraine quickly and quietly. And then at the same time, we have Israel striking a Syrian city, and we have what is currently happening in Syria, which is totally insane, in Aleppo and other towns, as we see Israel bombing after they just propped up Jolani, the Al Qaeda boss from HTS, formerly Al Nusra Front, as a new leader of Syria after overthrowing Assad, which they said years ago they would. In the 1980s CIA document bringing arms to bear in Syria, which we reported on back in freaking 2018. So we've been warning about it, where they say they would overthrow Assad, at that time Assad Senior, to then bring in militants over the border from Turkey, Iraq, and Lebanon, which is exactly what happened, to go after the Alawites, Christians, and Sunnis, which is exactly what happened. And now we have this current conflict continuing. For a second day, Israel has conducted strikes on a Syrian city, vowing to protect the Druze minority. The Druze minority as an ethno-religious group with origins tracing back to a 10th century offshoot of Ismailism, branch of Shiite Islam. Again, this is as they target those that didn't want Al Qaeda running the country. That's what it really is. They're purposely targeting those who were pro-Assad as they have videos coming out of these Israeli-funded HTS militants forcing people to their knees and shooting them in the head and torturing them in many cases. And this correlates with everything else I've been saying, because Trump is giving Israel arms for this and just took Jelani off of the sanction list and is made him one of the be recognized as one of the significant leaders of the world that that he wants to bring peace to. This guy was one of the heads of Al Qaeda, who weirdly is super pro-Israel and anti-Palestine. I mean, it kind of says everything you need to know, while pushing Wahhabism, strict Islamic rule. I mean, give me a break. I saw a declaration of memes share this earlier. This is a very old meme, but it's good. It's always good to share. It shows Obama with the Nobel Peace Prize, and it says, "I don't always order drone strikes against children, but when I do, I make sure I'm wearing my Nobel Peace Prize." To which I said on X at World Alt Media, Trump and Obama may soon have this in common. We are witnessing the most obvious shift in the PSYOP yet, something that I knew would happen. Of course, Trump was bombing countless countries in his first administration. He bombed Soleimani, the Iranian general, preemptively, I should always add, and continued the bombings in Iraq and Yemen and Syria and other places back, I mean, in Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He banned the tallying of drone bombs dropped by presidents during his previous administration. And people act like, oh, well, I'm so shocked by this. Why? He said he was a peace president. He never was. He's always been militaristic. And now he's bowing to the neocons as he refuses to release the Epstein information, as Israel holds that and Mossad holds that, as he bows to Lindsey Graham and these war hawks, Randy Fine, and I mean, you name it. There's so many war hawks that are funded by AIPAC that are within the administration. So it shouldn't shock anyone, but nonetheless, I think it's pretty obvious where we're going, because this is a manufactured crisis that's been going on for a long time to shift into a massive power shift between the West and the East. And they need the right excuse. They need a pretext for it. And this is it. And in the face of all this, what do? They bring in emergency orders and restrictions that force people into food rations as they destroy the supply chain, as they destroy the internet through underwater cables in war, and then bring in social credit scores attached to digital IDs, attached to Starlink, which is setting up a bunch of stuff alongside SpaceX through the Pentagon and Palantir with Israel as we speak. None of this is a coincidence. I urge people to see my recent video on the global CBDC rollout, because it directly correlates with what we are witnessing now. So, alas, what are we going to do about it? Well, if we're not going to vote for someone else to change the game, voting for these politicians to solve the problems of politicians is just so silly. The solution is to be independent, individualistic. That is a basis of freedom. That is a basis of humanity. Both. It's synonymous. And the solutions are at our fingertips. And people don't like me giving people solutions. Often I get the comments. I understand people don't like anything that involves money. But listen, sometimes you have to actually get prepared. You actually have to do things to save yourself and your family from the dependence on the system that they are manufacturing. And so go to any place. I've been promoting storable food for so many years, long before I made a cent off it. And I still only made like less than $100 last month in total off of it. It's not like I'm running off to the bank on this. I would be making so much more money promoting anything else. This is about giving people real world solutions. And I hope people take it seriously, because this is an option that you guys have at your fingertips to make sure that you aren't dependent on their food system, which is one of the number one ways they will get you to depend on them and fall into the reset. Because of course, if you starve, if your family's starving, you're willing to eat any poison, you're willing to eat any rations that they give you, and do whatever they tell you to keep them alive. Or you could already have something at your fingertips so you aren't dependent on them later on. I urge people to check out things like heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get 5% off, as well as free shipping on your order in the United States. This is a no-brainer. Get it for yourself and your family. Get it for your loved ones that think you're crazy. They won't be laughing later. And it's good to, defend yourself, your friends, your family, especially in these times, because everyone's just sitting on their hands. I also urge people to check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. Of course, there's freeze-dried chicken and ground beef as well. Use code WAMBEEF, WAMBEEF, all one word, and you will get 20% off on your order. This is an amazing deal, my friends. Guaranteed no mRNA, no lab grown meat, all American beef that's 100% natural. Get this before the rations get you. Also, check out our link for Wild Pastures, where you'll get 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box when you use that link on 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, and wild-caught seafood. No mRNA, no GMOs, antibiotics, hormones, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or chemicals of any kind, all raised on regenerative family farms in 48 U.S. states, delivered to your door, temperature controlled and customizable as you see fit. Again, use that link and you save your local farmers. You save yourself money and you save your health at the same time. I truly believe this is a no-brainer as well. And it's a great way to kill multiple birds with one stone, no pun intended. Of course, avoiding the CBDC system is so incredibly important. I urge people to check out firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ and buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium today. You could hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system, and schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. Mark is a good friend. We do many videos with him. I'm about to do one right after I finish recording this one. And let him know in the comments of the forum that he found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, W-A-M. We have a bunch of links for solutions for health-related things. We can't talk about it on our videos, or else our videos will be taken down since we are posting this specific video on YouTube, though most of our videos will be up instead on Rumble and BitChute. So if you're on YouTube, make sure to go there. There's no reason to be sticking and dependent on YouTube, where we were banned for 5 years and most people didn't even know where we went. Anyway, we're on gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Anything helps to keep us alive, my friends. So I urge people to check those links in the description to help support us if you can. We need your help more than ever. We're bankrupt. And on top of bankruptcy, we then lost 90% of our income on top of that. I don't even have enough money to eat. So I really appreciate any help we can get, my friends. You guys are the heartbeat of independent media, and we do depend on you guys. If you pledge $4.99 a month or more on Patreon or Subscribestar, or on X at World Alt Media, you will get exclusive content, including early access to a lot of our videos. Of course, we have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. And of course, we have a Bitcoin address that you could scan on the screen here, if you please, as well as find in the description of our video in text form. We have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, if you please, including privacy coins. And of course, we have a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise. Find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we are banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.